he called his 12 disciples unto him, and gave them power against unclean spirits, to cast them out, and to heal every sickness and every disease. Now what that means is that he gave them power to cast people out, or cast demons out that were possessing citizens and people there in the surrounding towns, and he gave them the ability to heal every sickness and every disease. So when it says sickness, we're talking about ailments like bad back or unable to walk, and diseases, we're talking about the diseases that cause those things, or cold, flu, things of that nature. Then we read on in verse 2, it says, Now the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first is Simon, called Peter, and Andrew his brother James, the son of Zebedee, and John his brother. Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew that publican, James the son of Alphaeus, and Labius, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. These 12 did Jesus send forth, and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into the cities of the Samaritans. Enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as ye go, preach, saying, The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Okay, so he's sent them out now, and he told them, don't go to the Gentiles, only preach to the Israelites. That was their only concern, right? And this is what he said in from verse 6 on again. He says, But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise up the dead, cast out the devils. Freely ye have received, and freely give. So he's telling them that their whole ministry, their whole reason for going is to tell people the kingdom of heaven is at hand, or the kingdom of God is at hand. And he gave them power to heal the sick. He tells them again, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise up the dead. So even bring people back from the dead, he's telling these people. He's telling the apostles, even bring back people from the dead, cast out the devils. And then he says, freely ye have received, and freely give. So don't charge anybody any money for what you're doing, because you receive these gifts for free. You give them for free as well. In verse 9 it says, Possess not gold, nor silver, nor money in your girdles, nor a scrip for the journey, neither 2 coats, neither shoes, not a staff. For the workman is worthy of his meat. So he says, don't take any money with you at all. Not in your pants, not in your purse, not in your wallet. He says, you guys, you're not going to need it. And he says, nor a script for the journey. So don't even take a map. That's the way I see that. Is don't even take a map. It says don't even take 2 coats. Don't take shoes. Don't even take a walking staff. Because that's what he means by when he says nor a staff. He says, for the workman is worthy of his meat. So basically, don't take these things with you, because you're not going to need them. You're worthy of your work. So basically, the things that they were doing, somehow, some way, they were going to get these things. They were going to be provided for them somehow. In verse 11, we read, it says, And into whatsoever city or town you shall come, inquire who is worthy in it, and there abide till you go thence. So here we see, he says, go into whatever city that you're going into, find out who's worthy, what they're, basically, are they righteous or not righteous? Are they God-fearing men, women, God-fearing families? And then stay there with those people until you leave the city. And then he says on in verse 12, he says, And when you come into a house, salute the same. Right? And if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it not be worthy, let your peace return to you. So if these people are God-fearing people and they're worthy, he says, leave your peace with them. If they're not worthy, take your peace with you when you go. In verse 14, he says, And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when you depart out of that house or that city, shake off the dust of your feet. So he says, if that city doesn't want to hear you, if the people in that house don't want to hear you, just, knock the dirt off of your feet and move on. Just go on. He says, Truly I say unto you, it shall be easier for them of the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. Now you have to understand Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Sodom and Gomorrah is the city that every pastor uses as the example for why homosexuality is wrong, and they're right. Um, God in the Bible, it does make specific mention to that being one of the sins that Sodom and Gomorrah was 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 committing there. Um, they they were doing those things. But in the same passage that you'll read in the Bible where it talks about the reasons for why Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, it wasn't just for homosexuality or lesbianism. Um, God makes specific mention to it because he says in there that it was a despicable thing to him. He did not find it appealing at all. It's a sin. But he also said that they were doing those things. Men were laying down with men, and women with women, doing unnatural acts, and all manner of wicked thing. All manner of wicked thing. It wasn't just homosexuality or lesbianism. It was all manner of wicked things. And people get sidetracked on this whole gay and lesbian thing and Sodom and Gomorrah, and they miss the bigger picture of what the real warning of Sodom and Gomorrah was. The real warning wasn't that, hey, you know, only because they're doing homosexuality, I'm wiping them out. That's not why God wiped out Sodom and Gomorrah. The reason was because they were doing all manner of wicked things. He just happens to make a specific mention that that particular act, God said that particular act is wrong. Period. That one struck him as being even worse than he needed to make a specific mention to it. Basically. Okay? So when it says all manner of wicked things, when they're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, what are they talking about? What they're talking about is everything basically that we are doing today in the United States of America. I mean, you're talking about extreme sexual immorality in Sodom and Gomorrah, including, you know, homosexuality, lesbianism, but not just that. You know, all manner of wicked things. So that would be all manner of sexual immorality. Probably they had many pedophiles, and it was okay. They probably had men that were raping women. For surely they had murder, theft, everything that goes on in the United States right now. That's why God crushed Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, there's some things that we don't have legalized, and some things that we do. But regardless, we're still doing them in our country. Our country's not getting clean. And that's why God wiped out Sodom and Gomorrah, because they were just beastly. They were like animals. But the reason for why I bring that up, and the reason for why I bring this up about this particular passage here in Matthew 10, where he talks about Sodom and Gomorrah, right? He says, and I'm going to read it again for you. Truly I say unto you, it shall be easier for them. Sorry about that, my tape recorder stopped. But let me read this for you again. It says, Truly I say unto you, it shall be easier for them of the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. So the reason for why I brought up all that stuff about Sodom and Gomorrah is because I want you to understand they were wicked in Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, when you think about wicked, they were so bad. All the stuff they were doing, God decided, man, I'm going to nuke them. Matter of fact, scientists have found Sodom and Gomorrah, the city, and they've said that the radiation levels are consistent with a nuclear strike. So he wiped them off the face of the planet. That's how bad they were. But notice what he says. He says, in the day of judgment, then for that city. So what he's saying is that there's still judgment for Sodom and Gomorrah. There's still judgment for them. Again. So right? Truly I say unto you, it shall be easier for them of the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. So Jesus was saying that, this city that threw you out, these people that threw you out, they didn't want to hear you. They, get away from us. We don't want nothing to do with you people. He says that for Sodom and Gomorrah, their judgment is going to be easier than for those people that cast you out. That's something to really think about. That these people, they didn't even want to hear you, so it's going to be even worse for them because they had an opportunity to hear and to get saved, and they chose not to. They didn't even listen to you, So, and on top of all that, if the apostles were raising people from the dead and they were healing the sick and they were, causing the blind to see and the lame to walk and doing all these miracles, that's enough to make you stand up and say, what is going on with these guys? I want to hear what they're saying. You'd want to know what's going on with them, because that's not normal for anybody. That's not normal. That's a miracle. You want to see what's going on with that. So anyways, I brought that up because that's a pretty interesting point. That for Sodom and Gomorrah, it's going to be easier. Their judgment's not going to be as harsh as for the folks that cast the apostles out of that city. And if you think about it, that may even be true today with the Christians being run out of their homes, run out of their cities, just run out on the day of judgment. It's going to be harsher for those people that push those Christians away, that were coming to save them, than it will be for Sodom and Gomorrah. Anyways, I'm going to have to cut this video short, and we'll come back on verse 16 in the second part.